Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're looking at Vespiquen Zoroark. A really interesting article came up on the Charizard Lounge. Andrew Wambolt is an amazing player. He's the originator of the Vespiquen Vileplume deck, which has obviously kicked off in leaps and bounds. Did really well, became an established archetype, and basically from there we've got a new creation from that beautiful brain of his. And this time it's going to be the sort of last chance for Vespiquen to do well until Karen is released. So this isn't the exact same 60 that he put up on his website. I'll link it down below, the article itself, for you guys to check out. And I'll discuss why I've added and changed a few things around. Only 2 or 3 slots have changed, so that's about it. But basically the idea of the deck is fairly simple. Try and motor through as much of the deck as possible early on, because we no longer have Battle Compressor, so the best way to now discard Pokemon is to Ultra Ball, Sycamore, Acro Bike, and in this case specifically we have Unown, which can discard itself, and Klefki, which can discard itself. So we're going to try and motor through as often as possible, getting into these pieces and just milling through, getting down to about 10 card decks, just like the Vespiquen deck really. And from there, we're going to try and be one-hit KOing things. Normally, this isn't quite like Vespiquen. Its damage cap is more around the 110 to 140 mark, I found, in the early turns. So really, we need to like Lysandre, Shaymin, and stuff like that to keep up. That's also why we have the Zoroark in here for early game pressure and putting the opponent on a bit of a back foot, really. So yeah, it's a very interesting take on the deck, and a really interesting way to see if Vespiquen can survive even though it has lost Battle Compressor. So let's jump into it. First of all the Pokemon are 4-ofs. So for Combee and for Vespiquen, Vespiquen is, you know, half of our main attacker. It has 2 attacks, 90 HP Grass type with no retreat. The Grass typing isn't quite as good as it was in the previous format. Now we only have weakness really on Greninja. And it's still yet to be seen. There's a lot of talk about Garbodor and heavy Hex decks, so not too much hype around Greninja right now. But here we have Vespiquen to try and tackle it quite nicely, but no Toad anymore, unfortunately. So the Grass typing isn't quite what it used to be, but Be Revenge is still a great attack for a double colorless energy. We do 20 plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. Without Compressor, we're pretty sad. So like I say, we have to motor through as best we can with other things that we have. There is also Intelligence Gathering for 10 damage, and we get to draw until we have 6 in hand for a single colourless energy. We don't play any energy outside of double colourless, so it's quite slow to use Intelligence Gathering. I would rarely ever go for this option. It might even be better just to Sky Return instead and try and draw those cards the following turn. So we never really use that attack in this deck specifically. Following up, we have the 4-4 Zoroark line. This was a 3-2-1 line in Wambolt's article, and this is the biggest thing I had to question. He said that the break was played not for the attack, because again, just for DCE. The break was being played just because it's a HP buff to make it more awkward for things like Yam Mega Break, Giratina and such, which I can see working, but as a 3-2-1 line, I feel like it just gets discarded too often. And I want to access Zoroark as quickly as possible, so I've just gone to a 4-4 line. Other cups I've made, I've cut 1 Sycamore and 1 Revitaliser. This is so that we have an overall count of 28 to hopefully buff our damage output and our damage cap a little bit. And additionally, having the 1-1 Zoroark line kind of fits the role as another Revitaliser, because it counts as another line of Pokemon that we can attack with, basically. So there we go. I'm happy with the 4-4 split right now. I think it's just more consistent and more damage right now. But I can see you testing out Wambolts. I can see also if you find a slot in here, trying to slip 1 Zoro Break into the deck to have that HP buff as well, because it is kind of cool. Next up we have for Klefki. Big part of this deck. Megas are going to be around. There's hype around Mewtwo, there's hype around Ray, there's hype around Sizzle to an extent, there's hype around all sorts. So Klefki with that Wonderlock ability. I'm going to need to take a swig of water before going through this. Here we go. Once during your turn, before your attack, if this Pokemon is on your bench. You may discard all cards attached to this Pokemon and attach it to one of your Pokemon as a Pokemon tool card. Prevent any damage done to the Pokemon this card is attached to by attacks from your opponent's Mega Evolutions. If this card is attached to a Pokemon, discard this card at the end of your opponent's turn. So just like Bursting Balloon, it will discard itself after a turn, and it gives you one turn basically of immunity to Mega Pokemon. So really, really cool. It means that we don't need to have the hugest amount of damage in the discard pile against these Mega decks, because we're just going to spam Klefki for 3 or 4 turns and hope that these 2-hit KOs through Mega Pokemon is going to be enough. Obviously against Mega Mewtwo, you're not going to be going for the 2-hit KO approach because they can still damage change, and that does still work, I believe. Let me just read this card again just to make sure. Prevent any damage done to Pokemon. So yeah, it doesn't prevent effective attacks, so damage change would work even if you have Klefki on board. So then we'd have to be Lysandering around Mewtwo most of the time, or just passing the turn away when we have a Klefki on, just to stall for a turn. But still very, very helpful in plenty of different situations, and it keeps us alive against these Mega decks, which are being hyped. Obviously, people are trying to play Garb, but there's nothing stopping us just Lysandering Garb, KOing it, and then we have our 4 Klefkis from then on. Pretty simple stuff. Additionally, if people play Hex, they have to sort of Hex preemptively, so it's a bit of a guessing game when your opponent has... When you have Klefki, you can just put one on the bench just to threaten it, so they have to Hex you basically every turn, or you can just, you know, hold it in hand and surprise them with it when they haven't Hexed you and stuff like that. So just turns here and there of immunity is going to be really awkward for Mega decks, no matter what they are. So Klefki, really, really cool as a 4-of. And then outside the realms of Mega, when you're up against the likes of, you know, Rainbow Road, Darkrai Giratina, all these sorts of things, what we're going to do is we're going to stack these on our bench to try and get a chain of Klefki going for multiple discards. So the way we do this is we have 2 Klefkis on the bench, you attach one to one, and then you attach that second Klefki to another Pokemon. Hopefully it's either an Unown or another Klefki. So you go Klefki to attach, and then, so you've got 2 Klefkis basically, and then you attach that either to an Unown. So in the process of attaching that, you lose 1 Klefki, and then the Unown discards itself and the original Klefki. So you get rid of 3 discards all in that process. You can do the dream scenario of having a lot of bench space and going Klefki onto Klefki, those 2 onto another Klefki, and those, well, it's 2 again, but it's as if it's the 3rd Klefki, goes onto your 4th Klefki, then that goes onto Unown for a plus 50 damage. That's going to be cool. We'll try and simulate that in the battle video if possible, but that's going to be a rare situation. But basically, these are free 10 damages. They're like plus powers when you're not up against the Mega decks. So there we go. Additionally, Unown is also going to be a plus power in this deck, where you're just going to put it on the bench, use Farewell Letter to draw us a card. In the process, it's 10 damage. Helping us cycle through. We're trying to be as quick as possible. This does have fast turn 1s. You motor for a large portion of the deck, and Unown is a big reason why we're able to do that. So very, very cool as a 4-of. Rounding out with 4 Shaymin EX. It's a really, really high count of Shaymin, but we're not really going to be benching 4 Shaymin ever. It just means that we're liberally able to discard more for more draw power. Obviously, Target Whistle is no longer in the format, so we're never punished anymore for having Shaymin in the discard pile. And it just means we have access on the first turn quite often. Sky Return is actually a pretty decent attack and something you should utilize in this deck when we're not getting the right numbers that we need. If we're falling short with certain attackers, we can just go for a Sky Return that turn, bring up, you know, a Sacrifice or another Shaymin if they can't deal 110 the following turn. It's a decent process for us, and resets the DCE to protect it, just like you would in Vespiquen decks. At the same time, you can, you know, get drawing again the following turn because you've got Shaymin back. So I really like the 4 count, just gives us access, gives us discard fodder, stuff like that. So total of 28 Pokemon is higher than Wambolt's, like I was saying, just so that we can get B-Revenge into the right numbers that we need, because I found myself 2-hitting a lot of EXs and they just start getting through you and it just becomes awkward. So I thought I'd increase the count there. Onto the items, just 1 Revitaliser, like I was saying. Wambolt played 2. I think with only 1 Forest, if I had space for 2 Forest, I'd probably play the 2 Revitaliser still. But with only 1 Forest, I feel only 1 Revitaliser is really worth it. But it acts as, you know, our 5th Combee and Vespiquen basically to keep us attacking throughout the game. 2 special charge. Acro Bike is random. Sometimes you can Acro Bike into 2 DCE and you start crying. So now we have special charge to recover these things. I don't feel safe enough playing 1. I think that could be a potential cut if you just want more speed or an extra Pokemon. But at the same time, it's just a bit of a safe thing to have the special charge in here. Like I'm saying, we're not one-hitting as much as we would be with previous Vespiquen decks, so you have to expect to lose DCs in the process of just winning your prize race. So 2 special charge, I think, just to keep having access to them. 2 Trainer's Mail as well. We don't have 4 in here because we are favouring Acro Bike because that's a discard card instead. So we get a lot of draw power from Acro, so just the 2 Trainer's Mail count for space. Here is Acro. It's our new compressor. Hardly as good, unfortunately, but it gets us motoring through the deck, gets us into big combo pieces, and discards Pokemon along the way. For Ultra Ball does exactly the same thing. For Vespiquen, it gets us into our supporters to respam. Oftentimes we do need to target down things like Shaymin and Hooper on the bench because they're easier targets to deal with. And just keep hitting into EXs because that's what the deck likes to do more than anything else. We do have the 1 Pokemon Ranger. This is because Chaos Wheel shuts down this deck if you are... Because of course we're very reliant on DCE, so we need to Ranger, then attach DCE, and hopefully we get through the Giratina in that regard. That's kind of why Wambolt was playing the 1 Zorro Break, because he's hoping that he just Rangers once, you attack with DCE, then they Chaos Wheel again, but you've remained with a DCE, so you sort of save yourself Rangering twice, if that makes sense. So I can see why he wants it in here. At the moment, I'm not playing it. We do have 2 Lysandre. This can get us around things, keep us attacking into easier targets and EXs, basically. 2 N, the deck can get pretty thin after your first turn, so you sort of need N to shuffle draw so that you get more resources and stuff like that without discarding. Still need 3 Sycamore though. Powerful discard supporter when our hand is full of Pokemon, as well as just getting us the maximum amount of cards we can. So Sycamore helps us keep going on the first turn. The 1 Forest of Giant Plants, this is mainly to bounce other people's stadiums that are going to be a pain for you. Parallel City can be a real pain at times. Stuff like Silent Lab as well would be horrendous for us, so having 1 counter stadium is going to be pretty important. It may as well be Forest because it means we can sometimes, if we're going second, because we do motor through a large portion of the deck, there are times when we can hit the Forest, get going with Vespiquen and putting a lot of pressure on, so looks pretty cool to me. Also, because it's just a one-off, there are times when you can hold it, get the Revitaliser combo off and start attacking from nowhere. We are playing 2 Floatstone. Obviously we have a thick Zorro line, so getting 1 onto these is never too bad of an idea to give us flexibility. Just in general, it gets us out of annoying leads. We have, you know, like 4 Shaymin, 4 Klefki, 4 Unown, all as bad leads. So we need to have access to Floatstone to move these out of the way. We do then have just 4 DCE, all we need really in the deck to keep us cycling through, because that's where all of our damage comes from and stuff like that. So let's look at some options. I've mentioned it a lot throughout the video. We need Zoroark Break. Could be a decent option here. Tilt your heads now, because basically he just has a lot of HP. So he can survive some attacks. Another option is going to be a card that I keep mentioning as wanting to be a 61st card in a lot of decks is Hawlucha. Just like the way we're thinking about adding in, you know, how reliant we are on Lysandre. This way we can add in a bit of Gust via a Pokemon. If you are going to go down the Hawlucha route, might I suggest our own Parallel City. We are weak to Parallel in some regards, but in other regards, if we're able to go first, we can go through a large portion of our deck. We're likely to hit the Parallel first, and we can then discard Shaymins that we've used aggressively, as well as things like Hawlucha to get us additions of damage. So I would really like to see space for Parallel right now. I think the only issue is that we're weak ourselves to Parallel City. So if our only stadium is Parallel, it can cripple us, so maybe making a slot is an option. Right now I'm happy with everything going on in here. A few other supporters we could be playing. We're not playing Hexmaniac. I just think we want to be fast and win races this way. So no space really for Hex when we're just trying to be as consistent and dangerous as possible. But that's really it. Not too many other things. There's the likes of Pokepuff, the likes of maybe some tools that we're missing in here. But overall, I'm pretty content with the list. And yeah, it's been testing okay so far. I don't think it's absolutely insane, but it has been winning a handful of games. Definitely the mega decks seem to be what we're targeting right now. So we'll jump onto the ladder and see how we do. One great thing about this deck is it is still super consistent because the draw engine is really nice in here. So if you want something that just sets up every game with some nice stage ones, this is probably the deck you're looking for. We get to go first as well, so we'll see what we lead with. And as you can see, 3 bad leads already in our hand. Not too much draw power in here actually, so we'll see if maybe the Unown can help us out with a top deck. We've also got a Klefki chain going on, so we'll see here. And we will hold the rest because we're just going first, so no issues there. And looks like we're up against a Xerneas. Xerneas is a bit of an awkward Pokemon. Obviously 120 HP is not too difficult. However, if they have stuff like Fighting Fury Belt, then it's a lot of commitment for us to deal with non-EXs. Straight away I'm going to put the Klefki on because I know it's not a Mega deck if it's playing this version of Xerneas. And we're going to play the N before I use the Unown here. We do actually have the Forest of Giant Plants, but we can't attack anyway this turn. So I think it's going to be something I discard down the line. We can use the Acro Bike first here. And I want to get rid of Zorua just for damage. It is Rainbow Road, so it does put a lot of bench Pokemon down, but has to be pretty conscious of the Zorua here. We are going to Ultra Ball, getting ourselves rid of Forest and Sycamore. And we'll grab our first Shaymin. I'm fairly content attaching DC to Zorua here. And we'll just set up for 4 cards. Here is our first Combee that we'll put down. But our hand is pretty dead already. Just 1 Pokemon in the discard. That's one of the slowest turns I've had. Up to 3 if I use the Farewell Letter now. There's not too much need for us to do it just yet. The only issue is if we're hexed, but I feel like Xerneas Rainbow Road rarely will hex on the first turn. Keep these Pokemon in hand for now because I might Sycamore next turn and get the damage that way. I don't feel like there's too many things I'd want to top deck into here that can help me out too significantly. Unless it's specifically like Ultra Ball. We'll have a look with this, I guess. There's no reason not to really right now. It's just another Vespi. Losing a lot of Quen pieces early plus the Revitaliser does make me a little nervous. So I think we're going to bank on Zoroark next turn and we'll bench a couple of these. Bit of a slower approach, but we're not in too bad shape here. And we'll see how fast the Rainbow Road goes. Normally they need to get some elixir combos going, and oftentimes they rely on EXP share, so we'll have a look at what they're doing here. The opponent does play down a Hooper EX and a Joltik. Hooper is going to grab... Oh wow, it plays Shaymin EX, both of them. That's interesting because... you normally get the grass typing via Galvantula, so that is a Shaymin we don't often see. The Aroma of Gratitude Shaymin, of course. There's a Double Colorless being attached to the Xerneas. So it's a question of if he wants to bench anything else this turn. It then does play into Zoroark, but of course he does not do that. So 3, 6, 9, 12, yeah, 10 shy. So we do want to commit this Double Colorless energy. I'm actually half considering putting it onto Shaymin for a Sky Return potentially. It would mean that we'd have to find Floatstone. Either we stand in, Floatstone retreat, or we just put it straight on the Klefki. We'll just play both of these Quen, and I think I do want to attach DC to Shaymin here. Alternatives is to play N rather than Sycamore. I think that's fine also actually because there's no Pokemon in the hand now to discard. Do I still commit this DCE though? It sets up the Xerneas as long as he doesn't find Fighting Fury Belt. So we'll play N. Oftentimes this deck doesn't have space for fighting Fury Belts, so we do whiff the float, but we can keep digging here with a couple of Unown. There's Ultra Ball, that's going to be helpful to us. I do want to play the Unown first because I'm going to have to anyway. Get into a Combee, I think I'm going to discard it. We can just grab a Klefki. No, we'll just grab more draw power, why not? Could be awkward if it's an unplayable, but there's quite a few playable cards in this deck, like Klefki, Acro Bike, stuff like that, so it does look like it's an unplayable, which is a shame. So we'll just set up for 3, hope to hit Floatstone, and we do, which is nice. Do I want it on Zoroark? I think I do. So we can stand in, and we will retreat. I could attach this and get it back into the hand. Makes it slightly weaker to an N. I could attach it just to get it off our board. And the question is, where do we want to go into? I think I just bench Combee and let that be the sack. 2, 4, 8, 9, 10. Okay. I have to be aware, I do have Revitaliser, but we've already lost 1 Combee. He has enough if I send up the Shaymin. It does have to be Combee. But as you can see, the deck isn't quite as fast as the old builds. The only thing I don't want to see here is attachment, then Lysandre. But if that does happen, we do have alternative attackers, so it's not the end of the world if it is the case. Just the Rainbow Force on the Combee, which I'm not sad about at all, especially because the opponent hasn't got any other genuine attackers. Like, he can EXP share the Joltik, but I'm not too threatened by that at all. So we have 10 in the discard, which is cool. I could play the N as well. Don't really feel like this is a hand I want to Sycamore, because again that Revitaliser is stuck in there. The opponent has got a large hand size, so we may as well just go for the N. Even though he's not doing much, I feel like tempo wise I want to get the N going for my own side of the board, because there's some more stuff we can get rid of here. I think I'm going to keep the Lysandre in hand. I think I actually want to keep everything in this hand. I'll start with the Acro Bike here. Either way, I'm going to discard both with the Ultra Ball, so the other Ultra Ball that I have in my hand. One thing you do have to be fairly careful of is the amount of Shaymin we're benching. I think because our opponent has 3 EXs themselves, I think this is fine, and it doesn't look like he's threatening too much. The only issue being that he can Galvantula next turn and set up both of these things, but then we can knock it out, and as long as he doesn't get another Galvantula, he's wasted another turn, so it's almost like a bait in that regard. So we'll see how that goes. We do knock out the Xerneas, and the EXP share does go on to the Joltik. Our first prize, leveling it back up, but board state wise we're looking much happier right now. We do see an Ultra Ball. For a Xerneas. Here's a Max Elixir. This is somewhat of a scare. Yep, does hit it. Let's see if he has Double Colorless to boot. Looks like just the EXP share. and a Sycamore, so he needs to hit DCE now. There goes the Skyfield. Another Max Elixir. Wow, does he have a third in hand? Just see a Super Rod. Setting up for 3. Let's see if he can hit another Elixir here. That would be insane. Still no manual attachment, of course. Does he have a turn attach to boot with this guy? Just a retreat into Shaymin. That's really nice for us. So, prize race wise, we can just deal with this. Go down to 3. Have attackers in the back. And then we just sort of forget about everything else. Alternatives is just to deal with this guy. He's lost quite a few elixirs, and then he's really not got any option other than Zoroark. It's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. I think this does get committed. To play around N as best we can. I think we then, with that in mind, we'll play the Acro as well. We get an N of our own. I think we can just race here quite comfortably without having to worry about this. He can respond, we can respond for quite a while. So I think the race is on. And as of right now, we're winning it. So let's see what the opponent can do. Brings up the nice little free retreat Joltik. Does go into Zoroark. Does use Max Elixir. Does hit it for the Xerneas. Then we see Vespiquen for Sycamore. And we're going to see an Ultra Ball before the Sycamore. Maybe getting Galvantula. Looks like just another Xerneas. And we do see Professor Sycamore here. There's DCE. A retreat into the Xerneas. And we get hit with Rainbow Force. So, here is Zoroark. I think I just want to get the knockout here and play N to make it awkward for him to find a response. Alternatives is just to hold this hand because we have the Lysandre already. In that case, do I commit the last DCE to play around Ns from our opponent's side? Probably. Other alternatives is to play Sycamore this turn. I think that's actually okay. It gets rid of a lot of dead cards from us, so. And now look, we have so many outs into hitting this VS Seeker if we get end. So I'm going to hold all these trainer pieces. And we'll just Mind Jack. So the name of the game is to hit Lysandre next turn. We have 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So Vespi is definitely putting in a shift next turn. He has a lot of targets that we can look for. And he hasn't got a guaranteed response KO. Deciding whether or not he wants to EXP share the Joltik here. I don't see any real need to do so. Galvantula has a 1 retreat cost and its attack is 1 colorless, so he might just want to get these into the discard pile for now. Not too sure though, there's no real downside to attaching it either. Unless he has more super rods. So we'll see. Looks like he just does attach to the Joltik. We get Lysandre off the prizes as well, so that increases our odds even more. So we see a Fury Belt go onto the Xerneas there. We see DC go onto the Zoroark. So it looks like that's what he's going to attack with. Let's see if he has the N in hand. Yes, he does indeed. We've prepared for this as best we can. And we get Vespiquen. Nice. So there is the opponent's Mind Jack for 100, but we've comfortably raced and we were able to get rid of as many cards as possible to increase our odds of doing exactly what we are doing right now, which is Lysandering our way into the game. And we'll just be revenge. Nice. So winning a nice race against another non-EX deck is always cool. And we will jump into another game now, demonstrating the deck has a lot of speed and it can run the deck really thin, just like Night March can, and try and end proof itself like we did just there. So good demonstration right there. Let's see if we can win another game. This looks likely to be another Xerneas deck. It could be Xerneas Tina, or it could be another Rainbow Road. So this deck does struggle against Giratina a little bit, depending on how quickly we can deal with it. We are going to reveal a mulligan. And we lead with Combee, which is ideal. And we're going first so we can hold the rest. And looks like it's actually a mirror match. That's going to be pretty cool. Okay. Mirror match. Let me think what I need to do here. Got to think about my sequencing here, what I want to grab. It's almost one of these hands that's so good it's not great. Could Ultra Ball first. Sack off a mail. No, we'll mail first. Fail it. That's a shame. One more time. Okay, we'll grab Sycamore. Lysandre, I mean. We can still Acro Bike here. I'll take Zorua. So one of the factors is going to be how many Shaymin we put down compared to him. I still think putting down 1 in this scenario is fine because we still need to hit our damage basically. So I still think 1 Shaymin is probably correct, but I don't think I'm going to be putting any more down than this. And we're just going to hope that that's going to be enough to do what we need to do. We'll Ultra Ball now, just grab ourselves Unown. And am I happy playing Sycamore here? We'll play N. Just protect it in the hand. For later we have stage 1s for next turn. We have 30 more damage with these Unowns and a few more cards. Klefki is more damage. Not that I need to necessarily play it this turn, so I think we can hold everything. Protect us against an N a little bit. It's unlikely that he can turn 1. I'm considering putting this DC on board. Because I play 2 special charge, I always feel like getting it proactively is fine. So I think I'll attach it to Zorua here. And we'll pass it over. See what the opponent can do. If he wants to be first in the race, he needs to get Forest this turn, need to Float Stone Zorua, and get enough damage. He only needs 2 Pokemon, so that's probably not the hard part. The hard part is him getting Forest or not. So we'll see how he can do in that regard. Otherwise, his only way to win the race is for us to either miss a turn of attacking or for him to not put down a Shaymin all game. So he's either got to be very aggressive this turn or somehow deny us surprises later on. And there's a Shaymin. So race-wise, we're looking good, boys. It's just the case is if we can carry this on. Shaymin just for 2, it looks like. Do have both Lysandre in the discard as well as these for these 2 Vespiquen to come off quite quickly. I think in the initial turns it's better to trade blows non-EX v non-EX because then we're dealing with the threats in front of us. So I think that's the initial approach. Also protects us a bit against N, and then we just hit the late game and deal with Shaymin. The only worry is if he does play parallel or if at some point he Sky Returns. But if he does Sky Return, he has to take a knockout with it. Otherwise, he's behind anyway. We see the Klefki attached to Zorua, so that means that he can't get the Forest turn 1 attack. So I think any other target was better there. So that's interesting. That's a really interesting pick. So he just passes. A pretty slow turn from the opponent. We will Zoroark it up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 potentially. We will stand in. He has enough bench Pokemon for us. We can get a backup Quen going. Clearly not going to end. Or Lysandre. His damage output so far will be 30, 40, 50. So I'm happy enough just to deal with this one without wasting a VS. To deal with a Combee. So there we go, first prize up. And the opponent seems to have not the best of starting hands unless he's sat on like a Sycamore. But we'll see here. For such a consistent deck, it's surprising to see it go so slowly. We've seen an evolution to the bench, which is again like a surprising thing for me. No reason to not do the active because you can free retreat anyway. Wow, okay. Now the question is if this is bait or not. Could be bait just for more damage. I'm going to play Unown just so I can get Klefki out of the hand. I think again, knowing his deck means I can attach this quite comfortably. 6, 7, 8. That's all we're going to need all game. So I can evolve this comfortably. I think I will just Lysandre. Now we need to see if we can dig for float. Oh, cool. Have to farewell for damage. We get ourselves a nice little special charge. And we're going to keep the pressure up with Be Revenge here. So now we're 2 up. The opponent just seems to have had an awkward hand. Gotta feel bad, but still. I need to look back and see my sequencing turn 1. I think I did it wrong. I think I should have Acro Biked first. Even though it's okay, it just feels bad when you make mistakes. DC to Combee. Let's see what else he can do. Finally happy to commit it, so he might have something going on here. Here is a Sycamore. Looks like he's playing the Zoro break. So he needs to find Vespiquen in order to get the knockout here to respond at the very least. We of course have a response on him regardless, so unless he plays something like red card. We see a Trainer's Mail into another Mail into an Acro, so it looks like he's digging here. So there is the Acro Bike getting rid of a VS for a Floatstone onto Shaymin. See if he has any more draw. Looks like he hasn't found any Unown just yet. More Acro Bikes coming our way. There goes an Unown, so maybe it's a card they did need, or another draw card. Looks like it's Trainer's Mail. He's pretty desperate for Ultra Ball, it looks like. Looks like he hits N. Has already used Sycamore this turn. There's another Combee to the bench. Maybe Shaymin just for a few cards. Let's see. Pay retreat, that makes no sense. Okay, special charge. But it's just the one anyway. Maybe it's so you can get one more card? No. Okay. Cool. We'll attack with Zoro here because the damage can become irrelevant, so I'd rather him knock out the Zoro now, because the Vespiquen will always have the knockouts from now on. And looks like the opponent just kind of dead drew a little bit there, which is a shame. But it's been running pretty well for us. So that's cool. There's another Sycamore. Man, he did have a rough hand. Let's see how he comes back from this. We have an attacker set up for every turn, so we shall see. I feel like we're so commandingly ahead in the race that this game is pretty unlosable for us. But you should never say that in Pokemon. Stranger things have happened. There is the Vespiquen. There's DCE. There's a second Shaymin EX. Finally getting himself some cards. Looks like he's not completely neck-decked Wambolt because Super Rod's in here. And 3 male. Wambolt played 2. So it's not the identical list, but there are definitely similarities. Going to see the keychain into Farewell Letter. See another Farewell Letter. Doesn't need the damage, maybe just needs a backup basic Pokemon. It's one of the good things about having 4 Zorua. We don't miss it too often. There's an Acro. Gets rid of another VS Seeker. He does now find a Zorua. Retreat into the Vespi. And Be Revenge. So by not benching anything here, we prevent the Zoroark from getting a KO on us, which seems fine by me. So we'll just be revenge. Could potentially have played the charge there just for the one, but feel fairly comfortable right now. Like, we have the backup Vespi staring him down already, so either he has to Poker Puff or he has to get Forest Combee Vespi to respond us this turn. So I feel pretty confident. He also has to end so that we don't have Vespiquen for game, because Lysandre's just sat there waiting to go. So he needs a lot to stay in this game. Could happen though. We could get end and dead draw. It's always a scare. I wonder what the opponent has left. Not much is probably the answer. We see the final VS and a DCE get discarded with Ultra Ball. For a third Shaymin EX, nice and full art as well. Very cool. Gonna draw him until he has one card left in deck, so the win conditions are piling up. Oh no, sorry. 3 cards left in deck. How did I miscount that? I was just thinking 6. He still had cards in his hand. There is a Zoroark, but it's not enough. There's a Revitaliser. It's one of the pieces he needs. Does he have the Forest and the DCE? Just the stand-in. Wow. And the Mind Jack for 70. So it will waste no time. Just make sure I've got the damage in here. Yep. And we'll polish it off with a convenient B Revenge. So there we go, guys. A couple of good games with Vespi Zoro. Hope that showed off how the deck functions. Didn't get to face any Mega decks, which is a shame. But overall, I think we showed off good portions of the deck, different playstyles. We didn't do any cool Klefki chaining, just ones at a time, unfortunately. But yeah, that is the list. Let me know what you guys think about it. As I say, the article is in the description below. The Charizard Lounge is a great resource for results as well as top tier players and their analysis on the format. So great to get involved in that if you are a newer player. For now though, leave a like to this video if you did. Discuss it down below. I'm always happy to reply. And it has been Joe from OmniPoke. I will see you guys next time.